Actually, you got any of that wine left? Take a little sip. Just a little sip. Mine came in a box. Yours is better. Thank you. No, that's good. Welcome to episode 24 of the Not Salty podcast. I'm your host, John Bell. And as always, I am joined by my good friends and co-hosts, Kristen Skeevers and Mike Fenton. In this episode, we talk to our friend, Ann Smith. Well, before we get into Ann, I have to explain this is kind of episode 24 of season 1, but this is kind of also episode 1 of season 2. So we're just going to call it episode 1 of season 1.5, aka the no shit, we made it back for another season episode. We recorded this a while back, but Ann is a very important guest to our show. Her family is one of 3 families who originally bought all the land around Deep Creek. They originally started developing the area with the first sale to the state of Maryland to create what is now known as the Deep Creek Lake State Park. And honestly, we recorded this podcast several months ago, so I don't remember everything we even talked about. But I do remember Ann telling us about Pete's Pinnacle, how when she was a child, it was faster to get around the lake by boat versus car. I remember her saying something about buffalo wandering around Pergin Farm and lots of other stuff. And don't forget, most importantly, we get to hear what she's salty about. Mike, I'm just as excited to hear this as everybody else. Hit the intro. Welcome to episode 24 of the Not Salty podcast. I think when we started, if you're a listener, you know how we came up with the idea to start the podcast. We started it back in, I believe, November was the first episode.
We recorded in October.
Mm-hmm. October, November-ish. And we really didn't have much of a plan. I don't know if we thought we'd just keep doing it forever, or we thought we'd do seasons, or what we thought we would do. But we decided we would do seasons. And this is episode 24. We were going to end it at 23 for the season because it's 2023 and that seemed cool. And there's Michael Jordan and all that. But then we had a special guest agree to come on the show. She's here with us today.
Bribed with a couch.
I paid her by
This could be good. Careful how you phrase it.
You are our first paid guest. I gave you a couch to come on the show.
Was there anything with that couch?
Oh, well, Mike's got to help me drop it off.
Couple cushions.
Yeah. The delivery service comes with it.
So our first paid
what comes
guest
with the delivery service?
is Ann Smith. And it's also a running joke on this show that I try to introduce the guests, and I'm usually wrong. So I will try to introduce you, but please bring up anytime that I'm wrong. But to start the show, while we're excited to have you here, part of the theory behind this podcast is to interview people who have been at Deep Creek for a long time, who know the area, who have seen it change, and basically to document some of Deep Creek's greatness. And who better to do that than the lady whose grandfather originally purchased Deep Creek Lake?
Well, let me back up a minute. Actually, the lake was purchased by 3 main buyers. The Brennemans, the Rayleighs, and the Smiths.
Okay.
And Smith obviously being my granddad.
Okay.
My granddad had the majority of the lake. Brennemans had really what's the backside of the Wisp. And Rayleigh's had quite a bit of the lake. And probably from what you see on other forums, it's a lot of property right around Glendale, 219 Bridge. But, and they can explain where else. But
I didn't realize that. I thought the story was your grandfather bought it all, but that's not true.
That is not true. No, it was the 3 top bidders. My granddad got the most because he had most of Yacht Mountain Club too, which he quickly sold off.
Okay.
But he had, easy way to break it down is what he really kept for himself was Pete's Pinnacle, and his name was Pete Fulcher Peter Smith.
Is that the Pinnacle community that exists today? Is that area?
Yes, and if you happen to remember, it was originally Pete's Pinnacle.
Okay.
I worked there a lot with him when I was a kid. And he had the house, which a little stone real estate cottage office, actually, at the east end of Glendale Bridge, which most everybody these days would know is Karen Meyer's house.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but before it was just a little stone cottage. My grandparents, when my granddad retired from, and they lived on Green Street in Oakland, they moved down to the lake, and he sold real estate right out of that cottage. And my mother actually typed up the deeds. They'd be clients there. She would, on the old typewriter, because we're going back to the 40s, and do all the secretarial work.
Yeah.
And her name was also Ann Smith. That's where I need to get this little Smith plug in here.
Okay.
That once upon a time, a gentleman came from Pittsburgh who had recently moved to be a corporate attorney with Alcoa.
Okay.
And a couple from Pittsburgh kind of took him under their wing and said, we're going down to a place called Deep Creek. We're thinking about buying a lot. They're only like $200 or $300 or something like that. Come with us,
Okay.
do something this weekend. So he did, and he was told to go over to this little stone cottage at the end of Glendale Bridge, and he got out of the car. My mother was there, and that was it. And
She fell in love. And you bought it? Or they bought it?
I don't think anybody bought. I don't think any real estate business transpired, but evidently something else did.
Okay. Gotcha.
It went on. I have a brother, and then there's myself. Yeah, something else happened.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, that's an interesting flip to it. That's how it all started. We took it back to the roots.
We really did. We really
so
did.
the cottage you're talking about, if you're in Thayerville, if you're, say, by the movie theater, and you're going across the Glendale Bridge towards the state park, on the left-hand side is the house you referred to as Karen Meyer's house, which is one of the nicest properties on Deep Creek. It's a beautiful, beautiful place next to the bridge.
It is.
That was a little cottage that was originally the sales office for Pete's Pinnacle.
Well, it was for all of what my granddad had. At that time, the kids, he had not dispersed among his 5 kids at all.
So he bought all of the land and then he resold
Not
it?
all of the land at Deep Creek.
Right, but he bought like
over a third.
Right, what he purchased though, then he's opened an office and he was reselling.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay.
For the most part.
Yeah.
The only correction there is in 1955, I believe it was, the state got into the picture and decided that they should make a state park. And so by eminent domain, basically they condemned the property and took the state park at 35 cents a front foot.
Do you remember what year he bought it and then what year the state took that? Well, 55 is
He was buying in the, he was negotiating, throughout the late 30s and the 40s. I don't know precisely when in the 40s he got it.
So he was here very early. I mean, we're approaching Deep Creek's 100th birthday. So.
Deep Creek was still just growing. It was like a pond because it's naturally fed by 5 main springs. And the power company wanted to use it, the electric company for power. And they let it naturally feed and they created the dam and then they generate power, through that dam.
So Kristen knows the dates a little bit better than I do, but Kristen, I think they dammed Deep Creek in 1923 and it filled up in 25.
Yeah, I think that, right?
Yeah, the process started in 23, but it was operational and open in 25.
Yeah, but by operational, it was
not even
rough navigating because you still had houses and farms. One of the neatest things, and you can't do it on a podcast, is to go get an old map that shows Garrett County divided up. Let me throw this little history thing at you. Do you remember learning that people mustering out of the military got 40 acres and a mule?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So most of Garrett County was in those
military lots.
Military, precisely. And the electric company took those lots. They bought them from the people. A lot of people lost their farms, their houses, their homes. There's a bridge that was underneath the lake somewhere near Will-o'-the-Wisp.
I didn't know that.
You did not know that?
Bridge under there?
No, I had no idea.
Well, I doubt it's worth much right now or much of a. But yeah,
so
they just flooded these. They bought all this land and they flooded it to a certain elevation.
Deep Creek actually runs in front of Will-o'-the-Wisp. There was probably a bridge over Deep Creek, is what you mean?
No. Actually, Deep Creek, The headwaters of Deep Creek is actually up near Pergin Farm.
Okay.
Oh.
If you were to go out Sand Flat Road, you remember the old potato barns out there?
Yeah.
Right across from there is actually the headwaters of Deep Creek Lake.
Okay.
And then Smith Run, Red Run, those are some of the, feeders for the lake.
Mike heard a story on why they're all called Run, and he heard it was because of Prohibition. That's where they used to run the moonshine down.
Moonshiners. Yeah, so if they called them runs because it was the quickest way down the mountain if they had somebody come up on them. That's what I heard anyway.
I don't know. It sounds good to me.
Yeah,
That's weird.
That's what I said.
I like it. I like it.
Let's start a rumor right here. That's why your grandfather got started. There it is, folks. Listen closely.
I mean, Marsh Run over here was known because that's where the buffalo ran.
There was a buffalo here?
Yeah,
No kidding.
before
I
there
didn't
was
know.
a lake.
Well, I guess that does
and the
make
buffalo
sense.
ran in towards Marsh and Run, and that's why there's an area called Marsh Run.
Well, there's Buffalo Run too, right? I mean, that's also a
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of neat little creeks that don't even have anything to do with Deep Creek. Matter of fact, my family just sold 2 of them, White Rock and Salt Lick, in the last 2 years. They were still left in my grandparents' estate, and my first cousin and I had to gather all the cousins that we could, and then we acted as their executor and sold it.
Yeah.
The state wanted it back finally.
So I don't know what Pete's Pinnacle is. I know the Pinnacle community today, and I've heard there was Pete's Pinnacle originally, but I don't know what Pete's Pinnacle actually was. Was it still just a housing community, or was it?
No,
different?
it was just a raw piece of land.
Yeah.
And what my granddad did on his retirement is he got a road graded up to it. He had an old Army Jeep, and he literally cut down trees. He would have some help, but not a whole lot. It was his retirement project.
Okay.
He built a little stone, literally shack, to get in from the rain if he needed it. And I have a first cousin that 2 of us were 2 that mostly worked with him up there. And I'm sure if you look into the history of Pete's Pinnacle, you'll find who owns that exact spot.
Okay.
But he cleared out enough that you could see either end of the lake.
Okay.
Rotary clubs, Boy Scouts, everybody used to come picnic there. It was just a lot of fun.
That's super cool.
But that was really in I would say more like the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And then my granddad died in 1970. And it remained in the family until my grandmother's death in 1977.
Okay.
And I would, after my granddad died, I lived with my grandmother in the summers at least, and would work. But, somebody to stay there. And every year we had to go up and see Pete's Pinnacle because that was his pride and joy. But Boy Scout, groups and, like I say, Lions Club still came there to picnic.
Well, you've got to figure Deep Creek Lake back then when you're cutting this stuff down is a far stretch from what it is today. I mean, so at minimum, your grandfather had a lot of vision to see what it could turn into.
Oh, he really did. He really, really did.
It was probably wilderness and hard to get around. There probably weren't as many paved roads or
let's say that they used old surplus Army Jeeps.
That's how they did it.
And that is true. My mother would leave the stone cottage at Glendale.
Okay.
And she would go to head towards, say, the Blakeslee, or what you know now as Pergin Farm.
Yeah.
And she would check in, what we know now as, it's Harvey's, Sand Flat Road.
Sure.
I'm sorry, the name of the restaurant.
Little
Sandy's, yeah. Well, the gentleman that ran Little Sandy's, Mr. Harvey,
Okay.
would get on the phone and call my granddad and say, okay, she's just come by. She's safe.
Wow.
And there were different checkpoints along the way that people would look out for.
On the last episode, we learned that Mr. Harvey had a drive-in movie theater there. Is that true?
I don't know if Mr. Harvey owned it.
But somebody had a drive-in movie theater there.
Oh, that's very true. That's
Okay.
very true.
Did you go watch movies there?
Yeah, I'm kind of like telling on myself here, but usually we only had one driver and the rest of us hid in the trunk to check in.
That's how drive-in
But,
movie
you
theaters
had
work.
those little microphones you hooked on your window.
Yeah.
And, you'd run down. There was a building that wasn't too high, so they could see over it to see the movie. and get your popcorn and stuff. It was a great place, and you'll find a few houses. I know there's one back at the end of State Park Road that their intercom system is made of those old speakers from the drive-in theater.
Oh, no kidding.
That's really cool.
It was cool. But when Granddad bought the land, he bought what you know now as a state park.
Okay.
And the state took that in 1955.
Well, there was a rumor, and I don't know if it's true or it's a rumor I've heard. Originally, the rumor is they were planning on put the state of Maryland wanted to put the state park where 1,000 acres currently is. Is that true, or is that a rumor?
It's a rumor.
Okay.
But probably generated by my family.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Actually, between Bill Franklin and myself, one day he's my first cousin.
Sure.
Okay, one day we were comparing notes, and he goes, "You don't believe what I have." And he brings out this map of up North Glade.
Okay.
He said, "This is where Granddad wanted the state park to be." And I said, "Oh, no kidding." I said, "I have the cutting." He's like, "What are you talking about?" You know how they used to print? It would be a piece of like metal that they dip in ink and then stamp it.
Okay.
I had the original piece of metal. He had the actual map.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
So that was where your grandfather wanted to be, but the state.
Yeah, he didn't want
to.
He didn't think it was wise to put it on the main body of the lake. I guess he did have a vision about what the main body would be like. He also knew it was probably a little quieter up in North Glade.
It was accurate. I mean, the state park's in a beautiful area, but it's in the busy area of the lake too.
Oh, it is. It is very, very much so.
Imagine how different that would make things. Like, I don't know. Well, who knows if it'd be better or worse either way. But if the state park is where 1,000 acres is now, it'd be just totally different.
But I mean, if the state park was where like water is, so is it like where Waterfront Greens is? Was where like off North Glade? That's where they were looking.
My grandfather was looking up there. He was trying to convince them, but they weren't buying it.
It was like instead of Waterfront Greens, the park would be there.
Yeah,
pretty much. But
that would be
they didn't fall for it. They wanted something closer to the main road.
They want something everyone can see.
I think that's the point I was trying to
make. It's the main road.
The good location about the state park now is it's easy accessible. You're right off the main road. You're 2 minutes from everything. It's easy to get to.
And it worked out because they put it right on State Park Road.
Well, wasn't that something? They probably What was the name of the road?
I wonder how that happened. That was really good.
So then walk us through after that. And in case you're not watching, Ann just took Kristen's drink away. So then there were several parcels that were parceled off between siblings. And
his children, correct.
One of them is the Blakeslee, which I lived in the Blakeslee until 2 Sundays ago. It's, in my opinion, the Blakeslee is probably one of the prettiest areas of the lake. I remember as a kid, I was like, man, I really want to live there someday. I pulled it off. I lived there, and we just sold our house, and we're moving literally about a mile down the road. But anyway, so the Blakeslee is named after a family member.
My mother.
Okay.
My mother. Ann Blakeslee Smith.
Okay.
Wow.
I think this is where I skipped the part that, Mr. Smith came and met Mrs. Smith, and no, they're not first cousins.
Okay.
My parents were
There's
not
also
first
a
cousins.
rumor that your grandparents are first cousins. That's not true.
My grandparents or my parents.
Okay, good. So we got that out.
Now, there might be somebody else along the way. No.
They're just kissing cousins.
Yeah, right. There you go. You got it.
Welcome to the country in the 60s. Whatever.
But my mom was Ann Blakeslee Smith, and Blakeslee actually is a name of a colonel in the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
So it has historical value, and that's, I don't know, I guess they were running out of names.
Have you ever had cousins come up and they're like, hi, I'm John Blakeslee?
Actually, what happened is after, nobody paid any attention to the name until the developers bought it and said, that's a really neat name.
It is a neat name.
And
nobody really knows what it means. It's just a cool name.
It was a colonel.
Now they do.
Yeah. But people have asked me countless times how much my mother charged to use that name. She says, nothing. They just thought it was neat. They had shirts made, and she got a neat little shirt and
cool
with Blakeslee on it, and she loved it. Now I have multiple cousins or nephews and nieces, and few dogs and cats named Blakeslee.
Oh wow!
The name stuck. Give them a little sweater.
Well, look at all the kids in the county now that are Blakeslee.
Oh, you're right. There are a bunch of local people named Blakeslee. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but it seems like it might.
I remember a discussion on Facebook once not long ago that how should we spell it? Of course, I was pushing for the way we spelled it.
Leigh.
There you go.
Okay, so your mom was Ann Blakeslee.
Ann Blakeslee, and she owned what is now the Blakeslee, and then a 240-plus acre parcel that was sold just last year adjacent to it, which, to my knowledge, they've expressed no intent to subdivide.
It's beautiful. So that is not the property I bought. I bought the 20 acres. A friend of mine bought and subdivided the 25 acres right next door. So we're moving to the property right next door to that one. And that property you're talking about, your family just sold, is probably the premier. It's one of the probably top 10 best properties in the state of Maryland. It's 250 acres with what, a half mile of lakefront?
Not a half mile, but it was really enough, I think, for about 27 or 28 boat slips. But
it's gorgeous.
We had farmed it. As a matter of fact, I'm not shy about this. I'll be 70 in June.
Okay.
When I was 21 and on the rescue squad, one of my early calls was back on our farm.
Yeah.
Where 2 snowmobilers were killed.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, very, very unfortunate. But they had circumvented our gate and our no trespassing signs. Actually went under a chain back into Holy Cross, and it was actually coming out of Holy Cross that this happened. And I called my dad and said, "Guess what happened on the farm?" And boy, he beat feet down here. And he was a corporate attorney. He beat feet. And then he looked at me. He said, "You keep saying you want to live here. This is your job. You take care of this farm from now on." So I did from the time I was 21 years old until we sold it last year.
What did you farm on it?
We leased the farm to the Harvey brothers up until the last year or so. It was mostly potatoes and beans. The potatoes went to Hanover, Pennsylvania for potato chips.
For Utz.
And then the beans also went for a 3-bean salad. And then there were quite a few years we just followed the pickers. Have you ever seen a potato picker? They leave a whole lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they leave an awful lot. And that's how we got potatoes.
Is a potato picker a machine or a person? I don't know.
It's a machine with usually a bunch of...
It depends on the year, probably.
Good point.
That's a good point, yeah.
One for you, one for me.
It really,
one for you, one for me.
It really was a big machine that kind of tilled up the ground and spit out the potatoes. And what didn't get spit into a truck, they actually had kids from the correctional camp follow behind and throw good ones, not ones that got sliced up in the process. And they couldn't get them all. So, we supplied most of that part of the county with potatoes for years and years.
So your mom then, we're talking about the Blakeslee, the property in the middle of the property you're talking about in the Blakeslee would have been Holy Cross.
Holy Cross was purchased early on directly from the electric company.
Okay.
And
that's a question we've been looking into in the past couple episodes. We didn't know who originally made that sale.
It was originally the power company made the sale to the priests of Notre Dame, who at that time, their office was in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
They call it their provincial office. And it made a lot of sense. It was relatively close, and it was a great getaway for them.
It was very secluded once you got back.
That's crazy. So they bought it so early. They had it for decades.
They really did. And that's why when you say when they filled the lake and they started using it, well, their pictures and their history, and now they're in the library at Notre Dame because they changed their headquarters from D.C. to Notre Dame. But they're pictures of the seminary students standing on piles of rocks. And this is, again, we're getting back into your history, where fences, we didn't always have fences. A lot of times what they had was...
rock piles.
Yeah, the farmers just threw the rocks off to the side, and that was their fence for that field. And they're pictures of the seminary students standing on top of these piles of rocks, just throwing them every which direction so they wouldn't be, and I think it was phrased something to the effect of a future navigational problem for people who were going to, recreate
that is so
the lakes.
cool.
I don't remember the monk's house. Like I can vision Holy Cross the way it is now, and I know there was a house there of some sort, but I can't remember what that house looked like.
Well, there was a little farmhouse, which just a couple of them used when they opened up the camp and when they closed it. Then they built basically like a big dormitory that would house like, well, depending on how many you wanted to squish in, and if you had bunk beds, 40 to 80 seminary students. Then they had another stone house that was for the priests.
Yeah.
And they had a little mess camp and a wood shop, all sorts of stuff
So
like
the
that.
farmhouse you're talking about probably would have been the farmhouse from the farm before they flooded the lake. Like it was just there. That
It's
was probably
entirely
the farm.
possible.
Yeah.
And you may remember it when the reserve was being developed. They wanted to donate that house, and they did donate it to the local fire companies
To burn it down.
To
That's
burn.
right. Yeah.
But what they found out is underneath the siding was copper.
Oh,
And so they had to take all the copper out before they could do any kind of burn on it.
wow.
It was pretty neat. It was pretty neat. But I remember many a times, because we knew the priests well, and we were there a lot. We went to mass over there, and I'd just show up, and the first couple of priests up here and brothers also that were starting to open up Holy Cross for the summer. And I'd just sit down, have dinner with them, and we'd just sit and chat. We didn't have TV, we didn't have any of that kind of stuff. And
I don't think they had cable back there until at least late 90s. It's
it's not
just
2000.
stupid things you remember. When they
Yeah.
built the Blakeslee community, they had to deal with the cable company, who I think was the company before Comcast. Maybe it was Comcast. I don't know. To actually run it back to that community. That was one of the first communities in that area to get cable when they developed it.
No, they didn't call it Holy Cross, right? That's what the development name was after they developed it? Or?
No, Holy
No,
Cross
they called
priest.
it-
It was
That's
a
what they
priest,
called it.
priest of Holy Cross,
Oh, wow.
who ran a couple of universities, one of them being Notre Dame.
Okay.
And then Notre Dame became their main focus, and that's why they switched their headquarters to Notre Dame. And then it was kind of crazy to make a 10-hour drive, so they sold their property here, and they bought an estate on I think it was Lake Michigan, one of the Great Lakes.
Gotcha.
It's probably only about 30, 40 miles from the university itself. So
I'm sure he's gone now, but I was mountain biking back there one time before it all got developed. And I saw the biggest bear I've ever seen in my life back in there. So there were bears back there.
oh yeah. Yeah, I have a
They
great,
like the corn and potatoes and soy and everything you were planting. They like that stuff.
They are herbivores.
part of my management of the farm was to manage the hunting.
Okay.
And I really only had about 5 guys that were allowed to hunt. And as the Blakeslee started building up, I said, no guns.
Yeah.
And so it was only bow hunting. But I have a great hunter cam with the flash goes off and it shocked the bear.
Okay.
Next picture is the bear looking up. The next picture was the bear's mouth, and we think the paw was swinging.
Yeah.
And then there are no more pictures, but the guy
he got the
he
camera.
found the camera about 40 feet away.
It wasn't long ago. My daughter and I were driving back there. Again, our property's on the right, Jody Wagner's field's behind that, and your old property was to the left. We stopped the truck and counted, and I made it to 77 deer.
Easy.
I don't know how accurate that is. We did
Easy.
our best to count, but we counted 77 deer.
And
Wow.
that was one of my salvations during the pandemic is get out of the house because I was over, on Lakeshore.
Yeah.
Drive over there and just sit in the field. And as the dusk came, you just watch them come out of the woods. 70 is an easy, everyday number, if not more.
It's pretty. So then you have another family member. Well, explain Pergin Farms.
Well, okay. Well, let me continue a little bit with my mom. She also had Penn Cove,
Oh, I didn't.
and that was the first development that the developers did. They bought that from my parents, and they experimented there.
My
and-
parents' house here was on first house here was on Penn Cove.
Or is that the one that was floated over? Or
No, they're not that old.
no. Seriously, they had to correct that road leading from Pond Run across Pond Run.
No, I
over
don't
to
know
Penn
that
Cove.
story. No, huh?
Yeah, there are other people that could help you more on how that
Mine was
done.
the house that my parents bought here was 262 Penn Cove Road. It was on top of the hill. It would have been the third house on the right if you're going up the hill. But
Okay,
it
well,
floated over. Not that I know. The real estate agent was Kevin Liller. He didn't disclose that.
I don't know if it's anything that needs to be disclosed, but anyways, they had a good experience with Penn Cove, so they went on and got to Blakeslee, but we kept the 240 some acres that my brother and I just sold last year.
It would be neat to look at maps. Okay, so if you're connecting Blakeslee, then connecting to the 250 acre property we're talking about, Penn Cove Road's on the other side.
Well, at one point, my mother had most of Pond Run, and I have all the old books where they kept records. My family kept records by hand, and some of you may remember Marvin's Men's Shop.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember one place where Marvin bought a lot back in Pond Run for $1,000. And then I saw where he transferred it. And when I finally talked to his son, who died just a couple of years ago, he said, well, yeah, Dad, that's how Dad financed the store in Oakland, is he sold the lot.
Oh, wow.
Well, I'm glad he did. That's why I run in my tux when I got married.
It was a staple.
there
It was
you
so
go.
sad when that closed.
Yeah, it was a staple.
Well, and there's so many trails I always joke, there's trails behind the Blakeslee property that go up to Tom's property, back over to Penn Cove. There's trails all over the place. And I always joke, I could probably go through those trails with my eyes closed. Like, I know those trails
I used to
really
cross
well,
country
and
ski them, yeah.
It's an awesome area. It's great.
It really is.
If
But
you
then-
connect that as one big old piece of, in my mind, that's thousands of properties, which it is now.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine what it was like when it was just one property.
It was pretty amazing. I mean, it was a great place, but to hike, or I would cross country ski too.
Yeah.
But it was a rule of the family that if you were going over there, you told somebody, so that if you didn't show up in a couple hours, they knew where to look.
Yeah.
Well, that's what made me think about it. If you're talking about the trail system, if I'm in the Blakeslee and I cross over to Penn Cove or Penn Point, I really don't know. You know what I mean? It's just they're the lines. They're there because they're surveyed. But
Well,
I mean,
there were old
person,
roads,
you don't know,
but
sure.
yeah. But then that connected on to follow with your point to Pergin Farm,
Yeah.
and my grandparents had 5 kids. The oldest was a gentleman named Perry
Okay.
Smith, actually named after my grandfather, and he got Pergin Farm area, from my grandfather, and his wife was Jenny. Therefore, Per for Perry and Jen for Jenny, and that's how
what I thought.
Pergin.
Oh.
A lot of
What a
people
name.
think Pergin Farms is about a horse. Like people think, oh, they're Pergin horses or whatever, but it's not. It's
First
a
of all,
story
it's,
just
it's
it's a Percheron horse.
whatever.
Uneducated peasants.
That's not how it's named after all. But
I cross country
No.
skied. I didn't ride.
So Perry and Jenny is how you came up with Pergin Farms.
That is correct.
That is so cool. Why are you laughing so hard?
You're on fire tonight.
That's awesome.
So I think it was Ellen Housley, one of the other interviews we had, talks about the Pergin Farms area, and she remembers it being a farm.
Oh,
and she
was.
remembers cows going down in the water to swim down in the
yeah.
lake in Pergin Farm. Okay.
When I was a kid, the old cattle guards that were actually boards or pipes that went across the road that
Sure.
the cows were
Yeah.
afraid to walk over?
Yeah.
That scared me to death as a child when our car went over it.
Okay.
It's
But
scary.
that-
Do you know
that-
what she's talking about?
That was the fencing.
It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
craziest thing. Like cows won't walk across it because it's a grate with holes in it. I think they think their foot would fall down in it.
It's like instead
And
of
it
like
works
a
as a
normal like a sewer grate, it's parallel pipes, and with their it's not squares. It's
Okay.
like just parallel pipes.
Yeah.
And they literally just will not walk across it.
It's like
So you-
tinfoil for cats.
So you can
Yeah.
put it on any road, and you don't need a gate because they literally will not go across it.
You still need a
Genius.
gate for people.
Yeah. People are like, I don't know.
I don't know. I was afraid of them.
Pergin Farms is a beautiful area too. It really is.
So what else did they have? They just had cows down there. So that was your uncle.
He had a regular farm. My favorite job was slopping the pigs.
Oh.
So also I talked about the bear on your mom's property.
Yeah.
There's a creek that comes up. What creek would it be? somewhere between Penn Cove and Pergin Farm. There's a creek that goes up to where Gary Harvey's property is.
That could be Deep Creek.
Okay, it might be Deep Creek. I saw the biggest turtle of my life there. Yeah, I used to have this bulldog, and the bulldog would go around and like try to scratch up rocks and eat the rocks. And there was this great, he was dumb, but I loved him. So he was down there one day, and he was like, we were on Gary's property right about where Deep Creek runs in, and the dog scratched on this rock, and I'm like, hey, buddy, let's go. Well, that rock turned around and hissed, and it was a great big snapping turtle. It was a big snapping turtle.
Wow.
Dog got away, everything was fine, and this was before cell phones, so I don't have pictures.
Snapping turtles are really scary.
It looks like a dinosaur.
I've moved one off the road with a box, and they're huge.
They don't want you to either.
I have a picture for the building we're in now, right here next to the green turtle. I have a picture of a snapping turtle walking across this parking lot. It legitimately looks like a dinosaur. Like, I don't know how old this thing is.
I was going to say that might have been the same one because it was like right over here.
Super mean. Don't mess with it. Like, there's no way I would mess with it. Every once in a while, you're watching the TikTok videos or whatever, and this guy picks up a snapping turtle and bites him in the face.
Oh, yeah.
Why would you pick that thing up?
Pick it
I would
up.
never pick it up.
How could you pick it up?
Yeah, I don't
They
know.
turn so fast. Yeah, we use like a box, and we kind of put. But now I know
Encouraged
you're
him.
supposed to keep them in the direction they're going when you see
It's
a
a
turtle.
$500 fine. If you turn a turtle around, make him walk the other direction, it's a $500.
Okay.
Is it really?
So what's the statute of limitation?
Well, just don't talk about
I'm
it.
just kidding.
Anyway, well, I heard that my friend who also found a snapping turtle, she just pushed it back where it came from, and then ended up rolling down the hill towards the pond.
Oh, good Lord.
hope she rolled it over.
She felt bad, but she was, she had to go to the laundromat or something, I think. So
She did that.
Let it die. I have to go to the
Almost covered
laundromat.
it has a shell. I'm sure she thought it was fine.
All right, so I'm excited to hear about the third one. What kind of weird animal did we see on the third piece of property? So, okay. Persian Farm, Blakeslee, and then 1,000 Acres was the Smith side of the family. Is that correct?
Well, that was my twin aunts.
Okay.
Also,
The kissing
my
cousins?
grandfather. No.
Okay, good.
No, my grandfather had 5 kids. Perry, who had Pergin Farm. My mother, well, I guess second in there it was, I love this name, Fanabelle.
Oh.
And Fanabelle actually owned much of what is the ski resort right now and Marsh Mountain.
Wow. Okay.
And
Before the Brennemans, or was that?
Brennemans have the back side of the mountain.
Okay, so they own the visible
Yeah.
side from 219.
And my aunt was known as the lady that would only sell one lot a year. And I remember early in my college career taking a course in Garrett just opened.
Yeah.
And some lady going on about, there's this old lady that, well, some young lady, like college student going on, there's this old lady only sold one lot. I said, yeah, that's my aunt. And by the way, she paid me a commission to sell that lot too. That was when you could keep real estate in the family.
Yeah.
Unlicensed, but
Who knows this is a plan or not, but what a great thing for your great-grandfather to do. You know what I mean? Who knows if that's where it's planned and it worked out, but how neat.
he had a fascinating mind. Don't cross him.
Okay.
Don't cross him.
What did
okay?
he do for his career?
Yeah, you said this is a retirement project. What did you do before this?
He was mostly in construction.
Oh. So he would have been like a steel worker in Pittsburgh?
No, actually, construction company in Cumberland.
Oh.
My grandmother was from Lonaconing,
Oh, okay.
and
I've
so
heard
he settled in Cumberland.
Boxcar. Is that
Well, he had
anything?
Cumberland Box Company,
I don't know what that is.
and they make wooden boxes. You will see them when you see peaches for sale along the road.
Okay. Yeah,
And
sure.
he actually had a little invention that went in the corner of the boxes that kept the peaches from wedging in and bruising.
Yeah.
And that was his big invention. And to this day, I have a bunch of his boxes with, they would burn his name into it. And I have them for the grandkids, or great grandkids, I guess they are now.
That's really cool.
But
so
he had the
cool.
box company. Then he moved up to this area and got in. Well, he actually started with the trout streams.
Okay.
That's why we had White Rock and Salt Lake.
Well, I was going to bring that. I don't really. I know where White Rock is, but I didn't know your family. Your family owned those streams.
Actually owned the streams, and there was great competition between the France family in Friendsville and my granddad over who could catch the largest trout.
Okay.
Who won?
I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to No, I think it's pretty fierce.
Dang.
I love all my White Rock friends, but I'm not crossing them. So, I don't know where I was going with that. I don't
1,000
know.
acres.
How do you describe White Rock? It's a great area. I don't know. It's
You know, it was good for trout fishing in its day. I don't know how good it is now.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting that, upon the settlement of my grandparents' estate, both my mother and my aunt were interested in it. And my aunt is still living. My, mother's been gone about 12 years, but things never got settled. And that's why Bill and I ended up selling it to the state. They didn't want it 12,
No kidding.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was. But
That's a good person to own the land. A good entity to own.
well, they fished it. They used it. I think that was, my mother's fond memories.
The funny thing about White Rock is I do have several friends in White Rock, and no one goes by their real name. Everybody in White Rock has a nickname. And I don't know if your grandfather started there or not, but if you meet someone from White Rock, they don't go by their real name. They all have nicknames. I don't know why.
I ran across that actually in real estate. I had trouble figuring out who was who. And the other thing was trying to figure out right-of-ways and things like that.
Now pull the deeds. They have their real name.
That's Bucky. He'll let you drive there anytime. Well,
I know Bucky.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kristen, you were saying something about another one?
No, you were saying where were we at, and we were talking about 1,000 acres.
Okay, so we've talked about Blakeslee, Pergin Farms, 1,000 acres. Then your aunt,
Yeah, my aunt over here that had
basically
Marshall.
Marshall Road.
And then my twin aunts, who were the youngest. My mom was middle child, and my twin aunts were, I think, about 12 years younger or something. And they got 1,000 acres.
Okay.
Was it actually 1,000 acres?
I think it was real close to it.
That's why they called it that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although my grandfather called it Back of Beyond because it took forever to get there.
How neat is that?
So now they're developing that now, Back of Beyond. I've seen a couple of those lots come up. Yeah, it's still called. It's still called
there's
that.
a Smith Point. There's Back of Beyond.
Yeah.
But that was my grandfather's name.
Wow.
Because it took forever, and especially in an old Army Jeep to get there.
I was gonna say, I was just thinking, like with the roads and stuff, it would have taken an eternity to get back there.
It did.
It takes 20 minutes with our roads
that's
now.
if my
That's the beauty
my
of it,
aunt's
though.
family
Yeah,
and my family would
Goes
ever
both ways.
decide to have dinner. We'd go by
Sorry,
boat
Mike.
because it was forever going by car.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I guess that makes sense.
It's
so you
hard
would go
for-
North Glade, 495, just like you would now, except the roads obviously weren't.
They weren't as good then,
Yeah.
but still.
But the lake,
At
she said
night.
the lake would be way faster for sure.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
So what was the craziest thing you saw on the lake back when there weren't many rolls? Like,
Oh, boy.
there's a lot of cool pictures of like people like water skiing in like a lawn chair with a beer and an umbrella and like
Yeah, Mike
doing,
Delegati
like-
told us about his uncle lawn skiing, drinking beer.
Yeah, doing like the multi-tiered like water skiing things.
Oh, there's
cool
a lot
pictures
of that. We used to have a ski jump up by the dam,
Yeah.
and I don't know why the power company or somebody got in the middle of that and said, "Take that down." And it would come down and then it would go back up, and we all used it.
It's like the rope swing now. It comes down every couple of
Yeah,
years and gets put back up.
The rope swing at the
Exactly.
undisclosed location.
Well, except until they finally caught on and cut the branch down. I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of stunk.
But the bridges were the old bridges, the old Glendale and the old Deep Creek. And if you went under those this time of year, you just go like this in your boat and you'd be touching the top of the bridge. And then by the end of the summer, the big thing was to jump off the bridges.
Did you ever do it?
I have. Wait a minute. It's okay.
Actually, yeah, I was going to say, Mom's not around to yell at me anymore.
She's smiling. You lived.
Yeah.
You guys are talking about it. It was right about my time to get here and fill me in. So when I got here, 219 bridge is pretty much what it looks like now. But it used to be a cage bridge also.
Correct.
I guess. And then, so I never saw the cage bridge on 219 that I remember. I did see the cage bridge on Glendale Road. And nowadays, it is, I don't know if it's, Google it, make your own decisions. I don't know if it's illegal or frowned upon to jump off the bridges, but if you do it, I don't know, do your own homework first. But way back then, when the cage was on there, you could also climb up the cage and jump off the cage.
Top, yeah.
And that was really sketchy.
Yeah, well, it was. It was. We lost some people that way.
People died?
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
this is right in front of the house. This is right in front of the stone cottage you're talking about too.
That's
People
correct.
died doing
That's
that. Like,
That's
yeah,
correct.
you hit
Okay.
the water wrong for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so the Glendale Bridge must have come down in the 90s because I remember going across it.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was midnight.
It was neat because it had the steel grating. It wasn't paved.
Yeah, you get
And when I lived at my grandmother's, I had a bedroom on the lake side, and you could tell there was a playhouse out on Beckman's Peninsula,
Yeah.
and you could tell when the playhouse was done for the evening, and it might be 10:30 or something, and I'd just gone to bed or something because I worked the early shift at a restaurant, and you'd hear this clank, 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 and you knew exactly where the car was on the bridge. My dog would not walk across it because his paws fell through.
Oh,
But sometime catch me. I have incredible tapes of them taking down.
Well, a
the
crane fell off, right? Didn't a crane fall off the bridge and into the lake?
Not a crane. I think there was a heavy piece of equipment, but
There was
a crane.
some sort of heavy piece of equipment that fell off the bridge, and they got it out of the lake.
Well, it's the 219 that I'm talking about. And I think that's what you're.
Okay.
Apparently,
Okay.
there's a giant chicken in there too. So,
there's a
yeah, somebody
VW
did
bug
that.
was the rumor when I was a kid.
gosh, there's all kinds of stuff.
Stuff.
Well, now, some of that may be true if you're talking about the 219 bridge, because it was a sharp curve coming. If you're heading
okay.
north, and unfortunately, some pretty nasty accidents. Holy Cross lost a couple of its seminary students.
Wow.
Holy
Grief.
cow.
It was
Holy
a sharp
Cross.
turn. That's one of the reasons they were. I knew the engineer for the state that handled the bridge 219. Well, I don't think he did Glendale. He just did the 219. But I have some incredible tapes of them moving the old bridge and getting it to shore where they could cut it up. And they took multiple pontoon boats and put under it.
Yeah.
And that's how they floated it over to the shore to cut it up.
That's
But,
really cool.
Wild.
There's some really cool like aerial pictures of both the bridges side by side.
Yeah.
Because they finished obviously the new one and then they took their time taking the old one out.
So if you do jump off the bridge, look for boats. Make sure there's none around.
That's
and,
probably
Don't
good
jump
idea.
off the 219 one.
and just pencil. Just don't.
Well,
look
it's
down
actually
and
deeper
pencil.
at Glendale.
That's what I was
It's like
going to say.
70
Jump
something
off the
feet.
Glendale or the State Park one. Don't jump off 219.
Well,
If you
State-
hit the
State-
bottom, you're screwed either way.
I know, but
Very deep.
219 is much higher than Glendale.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
But it's how you hit the water. If you're going straight down, Glendale is deeper than 219.
But that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or is it
but
about
either
that?
way?
Yeah.
If you hit the bottom, you're having a bad day.
That's probably
I
true.
don't advise it.
And State Park, I mean, towards the end of the summer, it's kind of hard getting back past State Park.
Oh, yeah.
Bridge,
I frown upon these days. This is stuff you could do in the 60s. Right?
Yeah, we did.
What restaurant did you work at when you were younger?
It was called Edge of the Lake.
Where's that?
It's where McDonald's is now, right by
Really?
Glendale Road.
Very cool.
Before that, it was Zampano's, Billy Weisgerber's mom.
Okay, we've heard about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was Edge of the Lake, then it was Zampano's. When I worked there, late 60s, early 70s, it was that age where people were just starting to grow their hair and the word hippie got developed or something. And the lady in her own little handwriting had a note on the door, the owner, that said, "No hippie freaks.
No.
No long hair, must wear shoes and shirts and stuff."
And that
Right.
guy must have came to Garrett County and saw that sign and wrote a song about it.
I was going to start singing that
That's
song. Glad you
exactly-
cut me off. Did you ever see Billy and Bell Bottoms?
No.
Oh,
I
man, that is so funny you said yes.
We just saw that
totally
picture of
gone.
Rich rotating.
I
circulating.
know.
That was pretty fun.
We recently did see a picture of Rich War from the 70s. And I'm pretty sure he had Bell Bottoms.
Well, I remember
Red
the
hair.
era. I mean, my thing in college was bell bottoms, and we'd embroider something on the bottom.
Sorry, Rich. The most important thing about that picture was he actually had hair.
Yeah.
Oh no.
For me, it was the poodles on his shirt.
So you also, thank you for doing this, you also run with, what's the correct terminology? The rescue squad? The
Southern Garrett County Rescue
Southern Garrett
Squad.
County-
Yeah.
What's that? How long have you done that for?
I started 1974, so it'll be 49 years in
Okay.
in June.
So what does that entail? You run the I don't want to ever make fun of me for saying ambulance.
They actually had EMT training back then.
Okay.
And as part of a college project to get some training in a field you might want to go into, and I was interested in medicine, I actually took the EMT course. It was a quick 2-week course. Took it up at the Police and Fire Academy in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then came down here. The squad took me right in, and that's how I got my first experience.
You've been saving people ever since until tonight. We asked you to turn your phone off for the podcast thing.
I did turn it off.
Hopefully there's no emergency in the past 45
This is
minutes.
also the most we've ever talked about accidents on a show as well. I was wondering how you know all this.
Oh, that's how you know that people died by jumping off the bridge? No.
No.
Okay.
That's
for after the podcast.
Street
Okay.
cred.
Okay.
Copy.
So, what's the craziest thing that you've seen as an EMT that you can talk about?
Ooh.
Oh, I honestly, I don't know that it would be Garrett County because I did spend several years instructor training up in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. And when I went back to school in South Bend, they said, well, we'll keep on going and we'll give you credit if you get work experience. I was the first female paramedic in the state of Indiana.
Wow.
And one of the most amazing things to me was, it was like, you've got a what? You've got a woman in here, Because at that time, ambulances were mostly run out of funeral homes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
Yeah, it's going to take you to one place or the other.
it was the first time, well, the second time was actually only about 2 or 3 months ago, but there's been twice in my life where I've actually had somebody say, you're not coming in on this. And the most recent one was somebody brand new who didn't realize the experience I had. But back when I was in Indiana, I was stopped by a state, it was a policeman. I don't know who. He just said, you're not going to see this scene. It was not nice. Now, eventually I did, but you have to see it if you're going to deal with it. Kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So he was being nice. He's like, this is a pretty gruesome.
Well, he
scene.
was sparing a woman's feelings. Right?
And then he and the driver, who had like no training, almost got into it because well, she goes where we go, and it's crazy. It was crazy, but no, a lot of the kind of stuff we don't talk about, don't want to dwell on it. It's
If you run into me, it's okay to spare my feelings. I'm good. Just tell me about it later. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty awesome.
No, it's pretty cool. It is, and I don't know, it's just a guess. In the 70s, it was probably very unique and very hard for you to become the female who did that.
Not in Garrett County. There were a lot of females. It was in Indiana.
Yeah.
And then it was in the 80s when I worked, and that was mid to late 80s when I worked in Pennsylvania. But one of the fun stories that I can say is they brought us, started the training back in the 70s. If you were to treat a burn, you were supposed to put something wet, like water on the burn.
Not anymore?
Well, we didn't carry IV bags, because they were all glass. You couldn't carry those in the ambulance. We didn't have these, plastic bags. So we asked, I don't know who did it exactly, but they asked Old German Brewery if they could, give us distilled water or sterile water.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we could do it, but we can't change our canning process. And I have a can actually sitting at home where I can grab it easily and take it in. We're having a banquet this summer for our 50th anniversary. And it's Old German beer can with a piece of yellowish paper wrapped around it. It says Southern Garrett Rescue Squad, sterile water.
Oh
No
my
kidding.
gosh.
But, you'd peel that. I mean, you try and pour it on somebody. The label comes off, and it looks like you're throwing beer already. All over somebody.
It's like, hey, a little higher.
That's what I would want. If you ever pick me up one day, just stick a beer in my mouth.
I mean, save me too, but I'll take a beer.
John, it ain't going to work out. Here's a Miller Lite. We bounced off of it a minute ago. It'd be very difficult for me to tell you the most beautiful part of Deep Creek. I think there's all kinds of different places that are equally as beautiful up on the mountains versus lakefront versus whatever. Smith Point, you just brought up, is probably in the top.
It's up there.
It'd be very hard. Smith Point is gorgeous. There's a lot of that 1,000 acres area. It's funny too, because thinking about it right now, it is fairly easy to get to. You can drive any type of car in the world you want to. You're fine. The roads are great.
Oh, yeah.
But back in the 60s and 70s, you couldn't. And this is Smith Point is probably one of the most beautiful sunsets. It's hands down gorgeous.
There were times, I think, in the 60s, there was just no getting there in the wintertime.
Okay.
Did anybody live full time out there? Like, did your twin aunts live there, or were they just vacationing there?
The one aunt lived in St. Louis. She died probably about 30 years ago. But the other aunt, her husband was professional Army, so they moved all over.
Yeah. When did so I guess one of their sons then was Bill.
Bill.
And
That's
then,
my first cousin.
And is he the one that started the golf course there, or how did that start?
I think you really probably have to ask Bill about that, but he was involved in the early planning. They had some professionals come in.
Yeah.
And, they recently sold that. So
I was going to ask you as a plug, I need to call Bill, and if you would too, we'd like to have him on the podcast. Bill is a great historian.
he is.
He's listening, so he's insanely smart. I'm IQ level. I'm not on the same level as Bill. He's a very smart guy. And then wasn't his dad like the commandant of VMI or something? Like
No, he went to West Point.
Bill did, or his father?
His father.
Okay.
Joe Franklin.
Okay.
And eventually he became general, and he was commandant at West Point at one point.
So I did not know him well, but I'm a horrible golfer. I mean, I played golf twice in my life, and Bill made fun of me, and he's going to make fun of me to hear this. I'm a horrible golfer. I played golf one time with Bill and Joe, and it was the only time I really got to know Joe. He was just a really nice guy.
He really was.
He didn't make fun of me as much as Bill did, but it was a good day.
Even when you're terrible at golf, it's usually a good day.
No, I just kind of stood around and smiled.
Drank beer and hit a ball with a stick.
Yeah. So here's a commandant of VMI. I mean, that's a
West Point.
West Point. Sorry,
West Point. Yeah.
That's a pretty big title.
He had several prominent positions in his Army career.
When I think I was bringing this up, that was him that started the golf course there, right?
Yeah, the Franklins.
Okay, yeah, that was him that started.
The Franklins, along with the descendants of my aunt who's deceased.
Which, to give them a plug, I think I saw on Facebook this morning, it is 6 days from now that the back nine opens. So, 1,000 Acres built a golf course, and I messed up the timeline, maybe about 10 years ago. And it was just the first 9 holes, and it's absolutely gorgeous. They started building the second 9 holes last year at some point. And I believe, according to Facebook, 6 days from now it opens.
They've had a couple benefits out there already, and they still have several scheduled. But
it's gorgeous. If you don't play golf, you want to just stand and look at pretty views, it's great.
I'll tell you what, a couple of years ago, I took Diane Thayer, who's a deceased husband, was the Judge Thayer.
Thayer's.
Yeah. I took her out.
I've actually sold his old house 3 times. Just neat. Sorry.
Really? Okay. Well, I took her out. I think I was in a golf cart with my aunt, and she was in one with Joe. And they were definitely used to golf carts. We were not. And I tell you, we were hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
We were ripping around those golf courts, but every now and then we'd pass, and Diane would be like a little hot bit of a raised hand, afraid to let go, and I'd do the same thing. But I hear there are a couple military out there, and I hear there's a bit of a competition with carts.
It's a beautiful area. If you play golf, check out 1,000 Acres. It's gorgeous. And Kristen, with that, we have our couple of canned questions we always answer.
Yeah, so we always ask our guests 2 of the same questions. The first one,
they're pretty tough,
is what is your best honey story?
That's a great start.
Yeah. I really just think it's picking people up fell off the elephant.
Oh, from the EMS part. Wow.
Yeah.
So we can't talk about that.
Yeah, I can't say too much about that. But
Mike Delegati was on the last show. If you hadn't listened to it, it's great. Mike's a good guy. His family owns. We talked about the elephant, and we talked about all the people who took selfies on there over the years. I bet you people have fallen off.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine how dumb you would feel? You're like, I broke my arm. I fell off an elephant.
You're not going to think about it till the next day.
That's probably true.
Probably true.
My daughter broke her finger at Uno's one time. When she was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5. She had this weird habit of walking and dragging her hand down where she walked, right? And on the lower level of Uno's, you open these two swinging doors, and her friend pushed them open. It's just and it pushed, and it stuck her finger in that swinging door. And luckily, I was with my friend who happens to be an emergency room doctor. And,
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at him and I was like, what do we do? Because no matter which way you push the door, it was gonna hurt her finger. Your finger was stuck in there, and it's hard to describe. And he goes, well, you're her dad. You just got to do it. And I did it. We pulled it and put her finger out, and she was fine. But we ended up not calling the ER. We took her home in a boat and then drove her to the hospital. But there's probably a lot of good EMS stories.
Well, and actually, even before the Honey Honey, when it was Pizza Pub.
Siri, before it was a pizza pub before the Honey Honey.
Yeah.
So,
any good stories from the pizza pub? Was that like a party place?
Oh,
like
yeah.
The Honey? Okay.
It really was.
Okay.
Underhill Singers. And
So that's always been the go-to.
There's a spirit that lives there.
well, that and there used to be the cellar door at Thayer's Barn.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard a lot about
Thayer's Barn was fun. The lady that she's deceased now, the wonderful, wonderful lady, would play the guitar, and she could sing. She could really, really sing. But she would play that bar, and she'd lean over, and she'd get her beer in her mouth, take a break, never miss a beat playing the guitar, and just turn that beer bottle upside down and guzzle it.
So who owned Thayer's Bar? Was it Judge Thayer who owned it?
No.
Oh, it wasn't?
There were a couple Thayer families.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been a relative, but I believe he was an only child, but I'm not real sure.
I'm curious because I've actually never met him, but I do know his sons, and it's awesome. He named his son Tom and Jerry, and I always thought it was kind of funny. But
that was Rick, that was his brother.
RT, yeah.
That was RT Thayer.
Yeah. He named his kids Tom and Jerry.
Tom, he did. Yeah, well, Tom and Jerry partied. They were my brother's age. Now those are some stories.
I don't
Those guys
know
go.
Jerry as well as I know Tommy. And I will tell you, Tommy's in the top 2 or 3 funniest people I've ever met in my entire life. He'd be great to have on a podcast. He lives in South Carolina now. But
He would be great. He
Yeah.
would be great.
I never knew his dad. I know his brother a little bit. Tommy's hilarious. And you got to have a good sense of humor to name your kids Tom and Jerry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Even if you don't own the bar.
All right. The other question that we always ask is, what are you salty about? So if you don't know, that's what's your pet peeve? Like, what bothers you? What just irritates you?
Currently or
Currently or
all-time?
ever, yeah.
Probably currently it's the traffic around the lake.
Really? Yeah.
It's I mean,
It's a three-peat.
Yep.
yeah, it's kind of a joke. You can't make a left.
You
turn.
cnot turn left.
I
no.
plan my days around left turns.
I plan my weeks around not going out in the boat on Saturday or Sunday. I take off Monday, Tuesday, or something like that. That's.
So do you still go out on the lake a bunch?
Oh yeah, actually, my favorite time is coming up. In June and July, about 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah. So
And-
calm.
It is common. I've come down from your cobalt boats and those kind of things to a pontoon boat, so you can tell that's age. When I'm up around where the Blakeslee is, and I'm racing a duck, I'm having fun at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, no. If you're listening and you haven't done it before, you've got to. When you take your boat and drive them at ducks, don't hit them. I don't think you
No,
go fast
race
enough.
them. Just race them.
Race them?
Come on, buddy. Come on.
I mean, they will.
I can make it. You
They
just
can move.
Yeah, you just keep pulling back on the throttle and clicking it into neutral and just say, yeah, come on. You can make it.
I'm staying at my parents' house
Beautiful.
right now while we're finished building our house. We're living there. And it's over in Waterfront Greens, Harvey's Peninsula, or Old Harvey's area. And it is pretty early in the morning. It's the old potato farm that's now developed. And it's kind of foggy and pretty looking up. And there's ducks everywhere.
Didn't they have the strawberry farm too out there?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think when I was a little kid, we picked strawberries down there.
Oh, that would be cool.
So that's a good question for you. I'd always heard the Harvey's farm potatoes there,
It could be both.
What's Mrs. Harvey's name that's still here? Do you know her? I've been thinking about reaching out to her too, because she's been around for a long time.
I can find out easy.
From my understanding, it was her family who used to own that, and she still lives around here also. But that'd be a neat conversation.
Yeah.
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 Is there anything we haven't asked you that you want to talk about the area? I noticed you have a Notre Dame shirt on. Is that coincidence or because of Holy Cross at Notre Dame?
Do you know? No, people probably don't believe this, but there are no strings pulled out there. but I actually was the first class of women to go to Notre Dame.
Okay.
What?
Very glad I asked.
Sweet.
Well, this is back when Princeton, Vassar, all the big colleges in Villanova, they were all going co-ed that hadn't been before. And that was interesting experience. But we got to know one of the priests. He's still a really good friend. He's about my age, and he kind of became one of the family.
Yeah.
And he would be funny. In the past 20, 30 years, he'd sit there, and he would just make it crystal clear. When somebody heard Notre Dame, he said, "We do not pull strings for anybody."
No kidding.
And that's what he would say. But
So if you're there because you earned it.
evidently, yeah. But
That's so cool.
I was there at a strange time when St. Mary's and Notre Dame merged, and then they killed the merger, and we had a choice of which campus to live on. And I lived on St. Mary's and became a resident advisor, but all my classes were at Notre Dame. So
Yeah. And then you came back to Deep Creek? Or was there a stop in the middle? Well, you said
I went on actually to stay out there after I graduated for a year to be as a medic, paramedic. And then I came back and I worked for the Health Planning Council and Memorial Hospital here. And then eventually went up to Pittsburgh to be director of paramedic training in the county, not the city, but the county.
Yeah.
And then it was just too much. I came home.
That's what I think about Deep Creek. Deep Creek is home. It's easy to live here. You can go away. You can always come back. I have 2 daughters. As a dad, I hope that I'm very confident my daughters will go to college or do whatever they decide to do. I'm very confident they'll leave for a while, and I also hope they come back. And I bet they will. I mean, what a cool area to live.
It is.
Gosh, I was thinking about something else, but I forget.
Well, that does happen.
Well, that's what wine will do to you. So, Ann, thank you for agreeing to be on the show.
Thank you very much.
I've got a trailer. I'll put the couch on it tomorrow. Mike and I can't promise tomorrow. Very soon. Very soon.
I don't even want to go down to that house tomorrow, so that's fine.
Very soon I'll text you. Mike and I will throw the couch in the trailer and drop it off. Congratulations. You are our first paid guest with an old junky couch.
Old junky couch.
That's a good price, though.
Not bad.